What is up, people of YouTube? You are joining us here on Twitch. I have just finished Chicory, A Colorful Tale on my PC, and I've got to talk about this. So, this game is pretty incredible, but I always like to give a balanced view, a balanced opinion about games, so I want to talk a little bit about what was good and maybe what they could have done a little bit better, in my opinion. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to even say bad things about this game. I can go through the list of everything that worked really well. It's a fantastic story. The story is very emotional, very impactful. I think that the themes are something that will hit very hard for a lot of people, and they use story content that worked very well for the themes. So we're looking at a game that makes you think about what it means to do your best, what it means to have self-doubt, what it means to have friends who have self-doubt, how to deal with having friends who have self-doubt. This game makes you think about whether or not you really need to live up to people's expectations, whether you need to live up to the status quo, the standard that has been established. There's a lot in that area of thinking about, some of the darker thoughts, the darker feelings that you have in confronting those things. And I say that they use story content that works really well with these themes because the game's about art, right? You use a paintbrush, you can color the world however you want. It starts off black and white, you can color it. And everything you do is with that paintbrush. And I think that the concept of using art as something to talk about those themes of, having self-doubt, feeling pressured to perform, feeling self-conscious about your work and what people think of you. I think that's something that all artists at some point think about, whether it's for visual art or other types of art, right? And I mean, it's not only relevant when it comes to art. There's other situations where you might have that sort of self-doubt, right? Whether you are in the right job, right position at the right company, whether you've made it into a school you actually deserve to be in. These are very, very poignant themes because they can make you think about regrets that you might have had, that doubt that you might have had at some point, that doubt that you still might have. And one of the things I really liked is that the characters in this game, they speak very honestly about these feelings. And obviously not completely at first, but throughout the story, over time, as the characters develop themselves and the relationships that they have with others, they're able to be more honest with their feelings, more honest with themselves. And, they're able to put that into words, which is something that we're not always able to do. So seeing video game characters being able to do that can be very powerful, I think. Of course, we want to know how's the gameplay, right? Because gameplay is always the most important thing. And I think it's very good. I think there was someone in the early parts of the game that was saying that they thought the game could use some overworld enemies. And this game doesn't have any overworld enemies, only boss characters that you face after going through dungeons. I don't think that the overworld enemies really fit into the theme that they were going for. So I'm sort of glad that they didn't feel pressured to have to put in those smaller overworld enemies just to, check a box for a video game. They said this game, this story, this theme does not call for overworld enemies, and they went with having just the boss enemies when they wanted to have boss enemies. They don't even always have boss enemies when you might expect there to be. So a lot of the structure and the gameplay services the story and the themes that they're trying to tell. But I don't think that means that they, had to make bad compromises, because walking around the world, painting whatever you want, talking to these adorable characters with food names, solving the puzzles are really good. All of that stuff is still very fun. Some of the puzzles are better than others, but I think the ones that are very early in the game are pretty good. Middle is like okay, and then the later ones get really, really good as well. And I was a little bit surprised towards those later puzzles because it seemed like the difficulty was kind of high for maybe what they were going for. But I don't know. Personally, I really enjoyed them. And that's sort of the same thing for the boss battles. These boss battles, not only do they have really good music, but they also are pretty tough. And I don't think there's necessarily a way to make it easier mechanically, but they have added options so that you can make the game combat overall easier by, increasing the number of hits you can take, or, just turning off the death option completely. So I think that's really nice of them to want to not gate people off through difficulty, even though the boss battles are pretty tough. And when you die, you pretty much come back to life in the same space. So I can't really recall how many times I died. It wasn't really that often. It was more so particular bosses that I ended up getting hit way more than others. And so I might have died really quickly in succession, because you die, you come back to life, you die, you come back to life. But overall, even though the difficulty of the battles is high, you can adjust it so that you can deal with it, set it to your level. I guess the last thing I would say about what was positive is just that the abilities that you get are very fun to use. I won't spoil them, but you can see that there's inspiration from a lot of different games, and there's no problem with that. If you see something really good in a different game and you think it fits well in your game and you can implement it, go for it. And I think they did pretty well with that. So, and the actual last thing, I did notice that for true completionists, people who are looking for a challenge in terms of platforming and puzzles, they've added a lot of extra puzzles that you don't have to do. But if you want to do them, you can do them so that you can get more of the clothes that you can change your character into. You can find trash, which you can use to exchange for instruments, and you can find lost kittens, which allows you to unlock different sorts of decor. So for those people who are completionists and want to do side quests and stuff, they have that stuff as well. Okay, that's enough for the good stuff, but I don't really have much bad to say about the game. It was over for me in less than 8 hours. Maybe if I was a stickler, I'd say the game should be longer, but I think at that point then they would be creating filler for the specific purpose of making the game longer, and I think they made the game just as long as they wanted it to be to tell exactly the story they wanted to tell. So even then, I think they shouldn't force a game to be longer if it doesn't need to be. One thing I was surprised about was that in the boss fights, it didn't seem like changing the color of your attack did anything, or I don't even think you could change the color of your attack in some of the battles. And that was interesting to me because I thought that they could add more mechanical depth to the boss battles by, making you have to change colors depending on the situation or something like that. But again, I think that they didn't want to gate the story by making the battles too difficult, so I sort of understand why they didn't do something like that. And it might have been hard to convey exactly what color you needed to use. A lot of the game's puzzles, battles, what you need to do next tend to not be completely spelled out for you, which is a good thing, right? You don't want to always be given the answer. You want the game to naturally hint to you what you need to do, which it did pretty well with. A lot of the early puzzles were masterfully created to hint to you what you should do. It's funny, I'm supposed to be talking about the bad stuff, but as I talk about bad stuff, I just end up going back to good stuff because there's not really much bad about the game. I guess I do like combat, so overworld enemies could have been fun for me, but I never thought to myself, man, this would be better if there were overworld enemies. I just don't think they were necessary. So I guess it'll really come down to preference whether or not there are negatives in this game for you. So let me just talk about, who I recommend to play the game. If you are someone who's looking for an emotional, impactful story told through very adorable medium, which is they've got these cute animal characters. You can color whatever you want. They have really funny facial expression. If you're looking to engage with something like that, do some fun puzzles. They were fun, in my opinion. They might be a little bit hard for some people, but I think eventually you'll be able to work things out, even if puzzles tend to be a little bit difficult for you. If you're looking for something that has maybe a little bit of challenging platforming, well, it's not challenging platforming, but it's the challenge of having the puzzles and the platforming mixed together in a way that keeps from being completely simple. And if you're looking for some fun boss battles, for me, tough boss battles are fun. I know for some people that's not true, but again, you can change the difficulty, change how often you can get hit, change whether or not you die. So if you're looking for fun boss battles with some killer music, the tracks are really good. This is a good game to be looking at. This is going to be one of my top of the year, maybe number 3, something like that. And it's not a very long game. So if you want to play through a game that's maybe like 10 hours, this is perfect. The only people I would not recommend this game for are people who are insistent that the game needs overworld enemies and combat throughout the entire game. If you absolutely will not budge on the point that a game needs overworld enemies, then I guess this game can't be for you, because there just aren't overworld enemies, and the boss fights come when they need to, and when they don't need to be there, they're not there. So sorry, there's not combat more consistently. The developers just don't think that that's necessary, and I agree with them. I think they made a good choice. So that's going to be the Chicory A Colorful Tale review. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment, let me know what you thought of Chicory, or if you have any questions about Chicory. If you want to be part of future playthroughs of games, you can join me over on Twitch. You can see my Twitch name, it's right here. And if you want to be updated when I go live or when I upload something new on YouTube, you can follow me on Twitter, which is also right here. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to catch you guys in the next one. See ya.